Hi everyone, welcome along to day 2 of WFS Europe. If you are in the concourse, in the vicinity of the main stage, yes, I'm talking about you three guys over there. Come over, take a seat. We're all friends here, especially after last night. This is where the football industry meets. That's exactly what we did yesterday. WFS Awards, if you enjoyed it, the gala cocktail as well. It's just great to be back in person, as we say. We've really enjoyed it. We've had some great feedback from day 1. So on we go with day 2. You'll be needing your energy. So many big hitters will be with us today, as they were yesterday. We'll be culminating with some stellar Q&As with Mauricio Macri from the FIFA Foundation, also Javier Tebas from La Liga, as well as a special WFS announcement. That's coming much later. I'm, of course, here on the main stage. I will keep you posted on what's going on the WFS stage, the expo area, etc., etc. Check the app for everything you need to know, and don't forget to keep posting on social media. Hashtag is WFS Europe. We are at WF Summit on Twitter and at World Football Summit on Instagram. So let's get going with our first session, which is entitled Getting Perspective with European Leagues. Now, perspective itself, I think, is an often forgotten, sometimes disregarded quality, but it's so vital. I mean, especially in this very frantic, fast-moving world of football, spinning as quickly as it is, it's come back big after COVID, but it is such an important characteristic to have. And what I consider one of the real voices of reason in football, European leagues. It's great to have them with us to just discuss the topics of the day. I'm going to be taking this one on myself. It's nice to be cast in the role of moderator. So please welcome as my guest for this opening session, the Managing Director of European Leagues, Jacco Swart. Jacco, please come and join me. How are you, sir? Are you well?
Good to see you, Dick.
Good to see you. Please take a seat. Take a seat.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to World Football Summit, and it's, as I say, lovely to see you and see you physically rather than via a screen and via a webcam. And it's great to be in person discussing, as I said, the topics of the day. For those unaware, and I think there's always a variety of people who tune into these events, especially via streaming, tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us about European leagues, what it is that you stand for and what your role involves.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure, first of all, to be here, and really good to see all of you who woke up early in this nice Madrid morning and to attend this meeting, and hopefully also some people will follow the session online. The European Leagues is an association which represents the interest of domestic competitions. And we do have members all across Europe. As you might be aware, UEFA, as the confederation in Europe, they have 55 member associations, national associations, and out of those 55 different countries, more than 30 are represented as members of the European Leagues. And European Leagues represent the individual and the independent league organizations in each country. Most of them act on the top tier level with their competitions, and some of them do act on the second tier or lower tiers. And quite some of our members, they do.
We have a quest for perfection here at World Football Summit. Thank you, Vinda.
That's what I like. And some of our members, and most of our members as well, or many of our members, they do represent the competitions because they organize both the top tier and the lower tiers in the professional competitions. And if you look at what we are aiming for in general, I mean, there are 2 directions of travel which we have. The first one is that we are really part of, let's say, the political arena, the stakeholder arena of international and professional football in general. And the second direction is that we try to create added value for all our members by organizing collective business development projects. And I think today we mainly will focus on the first part of our scope, which is, let's say, the political arena.
What you've got to do, Jacco, is come back another time at World Football Summit, and we'll discuss the second part then. I think actually, you know, knowing European leagues a little bit as I do, and having dealt with you guys before, I know that the notion of competitive balance is incredibly important to you. And I think when you look at how the last league seasons finished, obviously impacted by COVID as they were, it was interesting to see the title winners in the major leagues. We had some different names there. We had Lille in France. We had, of course, Atletico Madrid here in Spain. You know, we had Inter Milan rather than Juventus in Italy. That's important, isn't it, to make sure that there is the most level of playing fields and that there isn't so much uber dominance from a small select number of teams. And we'll come on to that in the more sort of like European and global context in a moment. But let's start off. I think an interesting point to start off is international calendars. UEFA has recently, of course, started to expand the Champions League calendar post-2024. FIFA clearly has ambitions to expand what it does with the Club World Cup, also the World Cup. There's obviously a discussion on the table right now about whether it should be every 4 years or every 2 years. Overall, how much of a threat do these projects represent to domestic football? Also just the ecosystem of professional football. And of course, remember, an ecosystem by its very definition is something that has to hang in balance, in equilibrium.
Yes. The match calendar for competition organizers, for clubs and for leagues is very essential, because everything starts by having a good match schedule, a schedule of your competitions. And it's also a matter of integrity. You want, as a competition organizer, that your competition is played in a good way, that there are no big differences between the number of matches at a certain moment, what individual clubs have been playing or still have to play in the respective competitions. You also would like to see that there is a proper home and away balance between the matches of individual clubs, so that not one club is playing 4 or 5 times after each other only home matches or away matches, but that there is a more or less equal balance in that. So the calendar, I mean, and we all know that each year only counts 365 days. And there is always let's say, an interesting debate and a fight sometimes about who is able to organize and to schedule its competitions when. And what we see, if you look at this from a broad perspective, it always starts when you talk about the international match calendar, about when are the matches and the tournaments going to be scheduled for the national team competitions. Either friendlies or qualification matches or final tournaments, like the World Cup or like the Euro in Europe. And in the current situation, you see that there is quite a balance between those release windows for international players, because by then the clubs are obliged to release their players who are called up for their national teams, to bring them, to let them play for their respective national teams, whether this is in Europe or outside Europe. And then all the other dates can be used for club competitions, either international club competitions like Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, or domestic competitions. Not only the domestic league competitions, but also the domestic cup competitions, and in some cases the domestic league
cup competitions.
League cup competitions. Yeah. Like in England, like in the UK, in fact. And what we see now is that with first from our perspective, what we see now is first with the decision from UEFA and their proposals, their ideas to extend the international club competitions. After this cycle, we now just entered into a new cycle, the cycle 21-24. So the next cycle is going to start after in the season 2024-25, and they want to expand the number of match days which they will use for their international club competitions, especially for the Champions League, but also for the Europa League and the Conference League. So that will lead to a further congestion of the calendar in general, and it will probably, from our point of view, it will go at the expense of the domestic competitions. On top of that, there is now a discussion, and we have seen, of course, all the ideas shared by Mr. Wenger, Arsene Wenger from FIFA, on expanding the World Cup from once every 4 years to a biannual World Cup, and also to make changes in the release windows for the international players during the seasons. It's maybe too detailed now to figure out what exactly the proposals are, but it will definitely lead to more, let's say, congestion of the international window, and it will also have all kind of other, from our point of view, negative side effects. Let me mention maybe one which is very clear to understand if you look at national team football. Of course, each football player who starts to play football at a very young age is dreaming of first becoming a professional player for his favorite team, and maybe to be one of the shining stars in the national team of the respective country he's playing for, or he or she is playing for. But only very limited number of professional football players reach the level of a very limited number of football players reach the level of professionalism to make a living out of professional football, and even way less out of those professional football players are that good that they are called up for their national team competitions. So in fact, only 1%, about 1% of the professional football players is also playing for their national teams. So can you imagine that if the World Cup is going to be organized every 2 years, what also would mean that not only the World Cup, but also the Euro, or the Copa America, or the Africa Cup will be organized every 2 years. So every summer there will be a final tournament from let's say, international team football. Only 1% of these players, maximum 1%, are participating in these tournaments.
Do you think, Jacco, sorry to interrupt, do you think that devalues those tournaments, the Euro, the FIFA World Cup, or the Copa America, or whatever it is, your confederation, and the major tournament that's played for there, the fact that they are more frequent, does that make them less valuable?
Yes, of course, that's a big question. Whether they will be more or less valuable on the long run. I think one of the main, let's say, qualities of the World Cup, like the Olympics, like we have it in modern sports today, by organizing it, it's also the same with the Euro. By having these tournaments once every 4 years, you also need a kind of tournament. You need to build up. You need something to look forward to.
It becomes special.
First, the qualification phase.
If it's every 2 years, it's perhaps not as special.
That will disappear from my point of view.
Okay.
FIFA, of course, they launched a research, a survey amongst fans, saying that this research, this survey at least, showed that the majority of the fans is waiting for more World Cups to happen. If we speak to the fan organizations, to the fan Football Supporters Europe, for instance, they tell us differently. So I think this is, of course, a very interesting question to ask. And even if it would create more revenues, for instance, you could also debate, yeah, but who is going to pay the price for that? Is that going to be the media, the companies who are going to acquire the rights? Or will it also go at the expense of other competitions, so that the rights values of other competitions will devalue?
Yeah. Yes, no, I mean, that's a very good point. I think, look, we've got a lot of different themes there we need to unpack. So I'll kind of concentrate on one to start off with. You mentioned about the congestion of the calendar, because obviously more major tournaments, expansion of tournaments, that has its impact on the vast majority of football players. Because you say 1% enjoy that limelight of playing in a World Cup or for their country, but the other 99% don't. And it seems like it's catering, as far as you're saying, for the very few rather than for the many. How do you feel, especially with the congestion and the conflict there? There was a recent case with the South American qualifiers, and of course there was a real kind of discussion, an intense discussion between Premier League teams, between Premier League and indeed other national leagues and their clubs, and of course CONMEBOL and the national associations. Do you feel that was, how do you feel that was handled, and could it have been avoided, Jacco?
I mean, the way that was handled, it was, I mean, we also as the European leagues, we were part of the consultation process, and we had discussions with FIFA, with CONMEBOL, with the ECA, the European Club Association, with FIFPro, the Players Association, the Players Union Associations, and we all made our sincere comments and arguments why we would not think that this would be a good solution, and after all, FIFA takes a unilateral decision to do differently.
Well, why bother consulting?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. This is, I mean, it's good to be consulted, but if you feel neglected afterwards, that your consultation and whatever your arguments are, that you're not listened to, then you really think that we should, it would be good to change something in the governance model.
Yes.
And we believe that it would be very interesting and very important to change in the governing model that consultation is not enough, not only for us, but for decisions which really affect directly, in our case, the domestic competitions. We really believe and we really think that consultation is not enough anymore. And this is not only applicable towards FIFA, this is also applicable to whoever, UEFA you could imagine as well. We really think that then agreements must be found between the respective stakeholders. And once again, not only the European leagues, maybe on some topics only the European leagues, because on some topics which really only affect the competition organizers. This is also, of course, an interesting consideration, that if you look at how FIFA and UEFA are structured, they are, on the one side, they are the governing bodies, the regulators of football in general, and also of professional football. And not only of professional football, but in our case, we mainly deal with professional football. At the same time, they are also competition organizers. They organize the World Cup, they organize the Champions League, the Euro, all kinds of other tournaments, which is very understandable and good on the one side, but it also brings them in a, let's call it a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult sometimes to believe that decisions are taken completely independently of whatever interest, individual interest, while you are also having an interest because you are organizing your own competitions. And so, therefore, we really think it's a fair question or a fair point we want to make, that when decisions are going to affect, in our case, directly the competitions of the domestic competitions, we need to find agreements with each other. And we do understand, of course, that agreements doesn't mean always that what we think is best is the only result what can be achieved.
But it feels like you want to be a genuine part of the discussion and the negotiation. It's not that people sort of, let's say, consult with you for show to maintain a relationship and then disregard what you say. I guess that's the sense of what you've been discussing there. Let's talk a little bit about European club competition versus domestic league competition, because obviously we've had this season another new European club competition launched in the UEFA Europa Conference League, to give it its full title. It's a third-tier competition. Now look, in the UK, in England, it's Spurs, Tottenham, who are in the Conference League. I speak to Spurs fans. They're not too thrilled about being in the Conference League. Of course, they would rather be in the Europa League. They'd rather be in the Champions League. Was there a need for this competition in the first place?
Yes, there was a need. And I think, of course, you are totally right, that I do understand that the Spurs who kicked out Ajax a couple of years ago,
they reached the final, 2019.
The Champions League final.
Yeah, here, very much in this stadium.
And they played here against Liverpool. But that now they have to get used to their new stage when they play in the Conference League. But yes, I do believe it is really good that this competition started. Because
why?
It really offers more clubs from more different countries the opportunity to qualify for UEFA club competitions, for the Conference League in this case. I also, and this is what you see, for instance, you have Flora Tallinn, which is the champion in Estonia, and they now qualified for the first time ever for a UEFA club competition, group stage phase. So this is the proof on the other side of the table. At the same time, I also think that it is good that this competition started, because if you look at the distribution model of the revenues in the current cycle and you compare that to the previous cycle, I really believe that this is a better distribution model. I mean, a lot of things still can be further improved, but the steps between the previous cycle and this cycle are steps into the good direction. And for instance, why am I saying this? For three reasons. First of all, more money is now distributed amongst the clubs who participate in the smaller competitions, being the Europa League and the Conference Leagues next to the Champions League. And also, especially if you look at how the money is distributed between clubs In the Conference League, it is based on more, let's say, fair distribution, because a big chunk of the money, I think 40% is shared on a, what you call a solidarity base, so equally, a starting fee, and 40% is shared based on sporting merit, so on your performance. So which is good, which is also good, not comparable to Champions League, but which is also good even for a club like Tottenham Hotspur, if they, because they're the biggest club probably in the competition, so if they reach the final, if they win the competition, once again, they do not make anything comparable to if they would have won the Champions League.
But at least there's a financial incentive there to do it.
It's serious money.
Yeah.
Yeah. The counter side of this is also, and this is one of the things we are having also, what we're discussing always is that clubs, also Flora Tallinn, to talk on that example, now that they qualify for the Conference League, they do get a couple of millions, which is in Estonian perspective a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, and that is having an influence on the long term on the competitive balance in the Estonian league, in the Estonian competition. Estonia, in fact, is not a member of our association.
No, but it's good in a way, Jacco, that you are using that example to sort of represent the kind of breadth of European football, which I guess is the point that you're making, that you want, if people are going to enjoy the riches that European football has to offer, that it is spread more equitatively across the piece. What about the Champions League, though? Because you've mentioned the merits of the Europa Conference League, and I understand your argument. But the new format for competition post 2024, almost double the number of matches in the Champions League. So give us your take on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really worried about that. For different reasons. Today, you have 125 matches in Champions League from group stage and onwards into the competition. Champions League generates over 3 billion of revenues. If you divide that by 125 matches, the average value of the value of an average Champions League match is more than 25 million euros. If you add another 100 matches into the system and you keep the same value, you bring another 2 to 2.5 billion revenues into the Champions League. If that additional revenue is mainly going to be distributed amongst the participants, although the participants will be 36 teams instead of 32 in 24 and onwards, that will mean that the money clubs who participate in Champions League, what they can make in that competition is such a lot of money, which is really destroying the financial balance in domestic competitions. But it's not only about the direct financial influences. It's also about, if you look at the number of matches, if you qualify for the group stage of the Champions League as from 24, you will at least play 10 matches in the group stage, which compared to the 6 today. And many of the teams will at least also play the playoff round afterwards. So let's say in average between 10 and 12 matches per team. Imagine that clubs who do play in the Champions League on a regular basis, so they do have an additional 10 to 12 matches at least against the biggest clubs in Europe on top of what they play in their domestic competitions. So it will create also a sporting imbalance between what clubs, the number of matches and the quality of the matches that clubs play in who do participate and who do not participate in European club competitions. This is not only the case in Champions League, this is also the case in Europa League and in Conference League, all across, let's say, the pyramid of the UEFA ranking from La Liga and the Premier League down to, let's say, Andorra and San Marino, to call a few small countries. And the other thing is that the players, when they play in those international competitions, I mean, they have another, let's say, window where they can show themselves. So the value of these players, well, the clubs, they do have opportunities to find international sponsorships. And I cannot blame the clubs, of course, that they do this. But you see that those clubs, so the disparity between those clubs who play regularly in UEFA club competitions, and those who do not is going to grow further and further. And that is really affecting the competitive balance. And why is that so important? Because sport is meant to have a very high level of uncertainty. If we do know the result of the match, the next match, which is going to be played here, no one, I mean not no one, but way less people are interested to see and follow these matches. So you need uncertainty, you need unpredictability in competitions, in individual matches.
I think also, I mean, given that you said about those who play in European club competition and those who don't, but particularly, as you say, the sort of knock-on effect of those who are regularly in the Champions League specifically and in the new format of the Champions League, that's where you really get, as you say, this huge disparity. I wonder, it just kind of occurs to me as well, Jacco, it's not just in those terms, the transfer fees that they can then afford, the values of their players, how that all sort of spirals upwards. But also, you compare that to, say, how many matches you would play if you're a Premier League team in England and you want to win the FA Cup. You enter in the third round, fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, semi-final, final. That's 6 games to win a major trophy. That feels like that is maybe devalued as a competition because, you know, actually you're playing double the matches just in the group and playoff stage without even sniffing a trophy in the Champions League. What about then the impact on the calendar there? Because is there, look, I'm just gazing into my crystal ball here a little bit. Is there any possibility, Jacco, in the future that the European competition would want to occupy the traditional slot of domestic football, which is weekend football? At the moment, it's the domain of the midweeks apart from the final. But, you know, is there a danger that were this to grow and grow, that there would be an argument that they would make to say, well, we now deserve to play on Saturdays and Sundays? I mean, that would be unfathomable for football fans up and down the country.
Yes, you know, football is it's mainly I call it a short-term business, especially if you work, you manage a club. I mean, your main concern is the next match, and maybe after that, your main concern is to get everything in place for the next season. So it is hard to predict what is going to happen, let's say, in 10 years' time from now. But I do believe that in the upcoming, let's say, cycles, these 3-year cycles which we have, let's say the first 3, 4 after 24, there is not going to be a serious debate about European club matches, the UEFA club matches, Champions League, to be played in the weekend, except for the final. This has been very clearly stated by the UEFA president, by everyone at UEFA. So, yeah, you never know in football, but
you take them
really surprising.
By their word for that. I
really think that everyone understands that, call it that way, that would definitely be crossing a red line for not only for the big and the top leagues in Europe, but for all the leagues. I mean, taking away the weekends for the domestic competitions,
it's unthinkable, isn't it?
That would be unthinkable. Yes, that would be unthinkable.
We're a little short on time. Let's go a little quick fire if we can, Jacco. Let's up the pace. Talk about a few things. And let's try and look at this positively. So competitive balance, as we mentioned, one of the pillars of European leagues. It's distorted at the moment, might get more distorted. And I said that the differences between that small group of big clubs and the vast majority who are not at that level and who find it hard to grow revenue and ultimately to compete at that very top level. What measures can be implemented to try and create a bit more financial stability?
I think, first of all, what I mentioned before, the distribution model of UEFA club competitions is very important because it has a direct impact on domestic competitions. We also managed, together with UEFA and the European Club Association, to find at least a good improvement in a better model for the solidarity money to all those clubs who do as non-participating clubs in UEFA club competitions. We brought it back from 4 to 5% again, and in fact it means that the money for an average club in a country who is not having a club participating in Champions League, that they will receive at least double the money compared to what they received before, which compared to what a club in Champions League earns is not a lot, but for that club it is really serious money and it can make a very positive difference. I also think that in general we can discuss whatever we want, and then I come back to this topic of governance again. But first, we have to understand from each other that we have to enter a new phase in cooperation with each other, between the stakeholders, and that what I said before, at a certain moment, first we must now understand from each other that we need to find agreements, and if we start from that base, I think all parties need to understand that finding agreements means also finding compromises. And finding compromises would mean that also we, the leagues, have to move in certain directions, and that we cannot say that yes, we want to find an agreement, but only on our terms.
And you're willing to do that? You're willing to be that open and that flexible?
If I listen to our leagues, if I speak to my board members, if I speak to the management board we are having, I know, and the one is having more willingness on this subject, and the other one may be more willingness on another subject, but in general, we do understand, of course, that would be part of the game. Yeah. And this is also very interesting. If you look at us as an association, we represent La Liga, Premier League, and the other top leagues, but we also do represent the Latvian league, we do represent the Finnish league, so also the smaller countries, with all respect, in football. And we do manage, very much also with the support of our top leagues, to stay very united. Although we might have different interests sometimes, there is also a very good understanding amongst the top leagues, and this solidarity money for the non-participating clubs is an excellent example, because the top leagues, they understood that they had to make a move, so they abstained from a lot of money from their share to provide it, and now I say it very simple, to provide it to the smaller leagues and the smaller clubs in Europe. That was really a sign of true solidarity.
Let's talk briefly about 3 words and 3 letters, I guess, that can either strike the fear of God into you or maybe raise a cynical eyebrow. Financial fair play, FFP. What's your position on the current debate at the moment in how that is evolving, Jacco?
Yes. Yeah, I think to start off, in general, it is very important that we think that football clubs should operate in general within their own means, which means that they generate revenues from media rights, from commercial partnerships, from gate receipts, transfers, and they have all their normal expenses. So that is just to run a business. That is a kind of principle idea we strongly believe in. Next to that, you have this, we think that strict measures should be in place for financial fair play, as well as UEFA club licensing system. And we think that at least the measures should remain in place, which are in place right now. And there were some emergency measures because of the pandemic, which was logical and understandable. But now we are, I'm not saying that we are out of the pandemic, but hopefully we're moving out of the pandemic. We're moving back to normal. We are here all again. So it's good, but we even would be in favor of strengthening those measures. I also personally would be in favor of trying to harmonize as much as possible, let's say, domestic systems with the international system, to avoid misunderstanding and to make it as logical as possible. And my final comment would be on this, that unfortunately in all these kind of systems, a sanctioning mechanism is necessary as well. The recent past has proven that there is a sanctioning mechanism, but it is not really, how do you call it, functioning. So we think this sanctioning mechanism must be revisited, revised, and then at least it must make sure that it will operate in a proper way.
It sounds like you're an organisation who, at its very heart, wants to be collaborative. That's your approach, that's part of your ethos, because as you say, you represent a whole bunch of different leagues in different situations. On that point, 2 weeks ago, European leagues took part in the Convention for the Future of Professional Football. It was organised by UEFA. What are your expectations for this convention?
Yes, I do have high expectations. I mean, we have now had this first part of this convention, And UEFA, it's very good that they took this initiative because we address the topics we are discussing today about governance, about financial fair play, about competitiveness, and also about women's football, the development and the strong development of women's football.
Absolutely.
So it is very important that, and UEFA not only discusses this with us, but with all their stakeholders, and not, let's say, the traditional stakeholders, the clubs, the players, and the leagues, but also with, of course, the federations, the national associations, but also the agents, with ambassadors, with the fans, and with people from, let's say, politics, from the European Union. So it's really good to bring everyone together. But they also created high expectations by what they want to change. And this is now going to be interesting in the upcoming weeks and months to see what really is going to get out of this convention. And we are there with enthusiasm. We are also there with a commitment, but we are also there with clear positions. I think I shared some of these clear positions today during this interview, we have some other on other topics and more details, and we will continue to contribute from our side to UEFA and to the others, and to continue, and we are committed together with the other stakeholders. This is also what I strongly feel, that other stakeholders do also have more or less same positions, similar positions on quite some topics. And especially, and there I think governance, from my point of view, is most relevant, because first governance must be in place, and then we can discuss everything else.
Be interesting to see how this convention progresses, but it does sound like you are trying to be that uniting force in football so that all of these voices are heard. And we're very grateful that you are here on our platform with World Football Summit to keep us up to date with what's happening in the world of football as regards domestic leagues and, of course, wider topics. Jacco Swart, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.